is that there was a BBC, which stands for British Broadcasting Corporation, documentary about a family in Tooele. And the show was called World's Strictest Parents. And the premise of the show is that they sent two unruly teenagers from the UK to places all over the world. And one of them was to Tooele, and they stay with this family for a week, and then they sort of learn the values of the family, and it sees if it makes a difference to their behavior. And this was actually what got me interested in the church in the first place.
Mornings are better with a warm beverage, even for Latter-day Saints. Meet Postum, the ideal coffee alternative and proud sponsor of This Week in Mormons podcast. Spotted on the coffee aisle at Smith's Grocery or at your local nearby store. Can't locate it? No worries. Order it at postum.com. Explore delicious recipes to tailor your Postum experience. Start your day off right with Postum.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world right now, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Mormons, the International Edition. My name is Georgia Travers, and I'm joined here today by Daniel Ferreira. How are you, Daniel?
Hey, how are you? I'm good. I'm great. Fall began here. We had wonderful, lovely, nice weather days, and then fall came like completely with lots of rain and like colder weather. But today is a very sunny, warm day, so I'm thankful for this kind of weather before the horrible weather begins here in upstate New York. So.
Yeah, well, it's definitely already hit here in Hertfordshire near London. So Daniel Yanez and I have been experiencing flooding and all sorts of crazy weather. It's been absolutely horrible today. It was freezing cold. I was outside with all three of my kids. They were all crying. We were trying to get them to school. Yeah, it's nice now. There's a nice sunset that I can see outside. We're recording in the evening UK time and sort of afternoon in New York time. But yeah, it's been pretty crazy. It's also worth saying Daniel Yanez unfortunately cannot join us here tonight, so you've just got Daniel Ferreira and I, but hopefully he'll be able to join us again soon, and we send our best wishes to you, Daniel.
Yes. So yes, dearly missed, and then but then we're going to share some very interesting news articles for the last couple of weeks and some interesting ideas here and there. So I'm wondering, do you have any fall traditions there in the UK? Because I've seen a lot here in upstate New York, and I'm surprised because Chile, fall is kind of a little bit miserable, so you don't want to celebrate it or enjoy it much. However, here I see a very festive and lots of motivation about the fall. I don't know exactly why, but there are lots of activities and things here in the upstate New York, basically because the foliage changes completely, turn into reds and yellows. It's gorgeous. It's a very nice view and visit.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of other activities too, but I'm curious, what about the UK? Do you have any traditions for fall or fall festivals or things like those?
Yeah, not really, not to the same extent as our friends in the USA would have. I mean, I think some places would celebrate a harvest festival type approach. Christian churches might have a harvest festival where you'd have people gathering food for people who don't have enough food for themselves, that kind of thing, but nothing major. I would say we do have something coming up at the end of October, which is obviously shared by our American listeners as well, which is Halloween. And then very shortly after Halloween, we have, on the 5th of November, we have something called Guy Fawkes Night, which is when we have fireworks. But that's not till later on in autumn. I don't call it fall, I call it autumn. So
I know.
I'll have to maybe share in future months about that. But nothing at the moment, really. It's kind of quiet. Although it's really busy in my family at the moment because we have so many birthdays. So it's there's 3 people in my immediate family who we all have birthdays within the month of September and early October. So my birthday is next week. It's on General Conference Sunday. My husband's just had his birthday this past week, and my daughter also had her birthday a few weeks ago as well. So it's been really busy for our family. But in terms of festivals, not really, not to the same extent. I feel
I
like
mean,
Americans always do things bigger, though, don't they?
I mean,
Everything.
yes and no. Again, my perception so far is that for certain things they would do bigger things, but I mean, summer is just Fourth of July probably. That's the biggest festivity or activity that you would see. But here in the fall, there are a lot of festivals. Apple picking would be like a very traditional thing for families to do. They would go to different orchards or places where you can have a series of activities like I don't know,
Mhm.
petting some farm animals, and then apple picking, and then trying some of the cider they have, or things like that. So that's kind of a big thing. And then on the other hand, you have the pumpkin uh, picking and festival, and kind of pumpkin carving in
Yeah,
preparation
getting
for
ready for Halloween.
yes, for
Yeah,
Halloween and all that.
yeah, we do
and
that.
and and then you see houses all decorated with fall themed, and then pumpkins here and there, and then you start seeing already Halloween decorations, and we're still in September, right? So it's
Oh,
for me, it's kind of, again, it's kind of funny. We're kind of 2 hours away from Sleepy Hollow, which is another like big place for Halloween as well.
yeah.
So again, my feeling so far is that this is very, very big, probably in this part of the country.
Yeah.
Maybe so in the other extreme of the country, where they also produce lots of apples and there are many orchards. I would imagine, have no idea, but that would be my intuition. But again, lots of social media places will promote and kind of remind people of the many activities that are available at this point of the year, due to this whole idea of the leaves changing, and then trees
Yeah,
preparing
yeah.
for the winter. So I think it's all nice. I think it's good.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I definitely love seeing all of the leaves change. We're really lucky in the UK. We've got 4 definite seasons, very similar to where you are. So yeah, it is a nice time of year. Although I do love summer. So I'm mourning the loss of summer, but I am accepting of autumn arriving, which it definitely has over here.
Yeah, in this case, I think yes, it allows me to bear with the short days and very limited sunlight that comes,
Hmm. Hmm.
by this time of the year here, and then it becomes like really, really miserable by November, December, most likely. So yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it allows you to prepare yourself for the
For
horrible
what is to
weather that
come.
yes,
Yeah.
what is to come. Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
it gives you the extra energy you need to recover, and then to get ready for it.
Yeah.
So all good.
Why don't we get started with our news? Why don't I start us off actually in Europe? So this past week there was an article which came out, which is President Johnson, that's our General Relief Society president, and Sister Browning in the primary general presidency. She's the second counselor there. They met and taught. It says with government and non-profit organizations, and this was in several countries in Central Europe, including Italy, Prague, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Croatia. This was from the 14th to the 22nd of September. So they were over there on a visit, ministering and teaching. And I just think that's great. They visited loads of different countries that you wouldn't necessarily think have a high population of members. I would never think of the Czech Republic and think that there were Latter-day Saints there, but there are. So,
I mean,
it's great.
first of all, I think it's just very relevant to kind of be mindful that the church has been increasing its numbers worldwide. Probably we don't perceive it in some of the areas we've been able to live, but definitely this is something that is ongoing. And the fact that they're visiting and ministering, and actually sharing views or ideas from church headquarters, so to say, to people that might feel a little bit not considered because of the distance, because of their circumstances. We know that all these areas, although they don't have a war currently happening, they've been affected by multiple political and then societal issues in the last, I don't know,
Mhm.
50, 60 years. So definitely, having church leadership visiting them shows a sign of interest, and shows a sign of the importance that, again, all members of the church should have. But then with circumstances and people and resources limited, then of course you need to pick when and how you're going to be visiting
Yeah.
members worldwide. So I think it's great. Lots of Christianity, though. I mean, Europe, although one might think that it's not really, you don't see lots of people getting baptized. Definitely, the ones that commit themselves will have, a persistent. They will maintain their efforts, and then their church attendance. Might take, right? Maybe
Okay.
different from what I perceive from South America. We would be, lots of people would be willing to baptize and participate in church activities, but shortly after they would stop going. So
Oh,
our
yeah.
level of commitment. I mean, I'm just from my personal experience. I'm not checking any data or statistics, but my perception so far is that Europeans would be less inclined to accept, missionary talks. However,
Mhm.
if they accept them, they will be more prone to, after they feel it's right for them, feel that the invitations and the teachings are good, they will commit and they will
And they
persist on
stick
their
with it.
commitment. Yes,
Yeah. Well,
yes.
like you, I don't have any solid evidence to support this. I can just think anecdotally to friends and people who I've met along my journey. But certainly that's true of me. So I was very, very reluctant to be baptized in the beginning because I knew that once I'd made that commitment, it was a serious commitment. So I sort of wrestled with that for quite a long time. Whereas I suppose in other places, yeah, you might see someone more flippant about just getting baptized and not really worrying about the commitment afterwards. So yeah, fascinating. But just going back to the article, it says they met with so many different organizations, including it says here the Croatian Red Cross. They donated washing machines, clothes dryers, and they're contributing to renovating a kitchen for displaced families. So really, they're getting to sort of the heart of what ministering is in those places, which I just think is really lovely.
And what are your takes about them not going to any, 70 or, member of the Quorum of 12 Apostles?
Oh
What's your
yeah.
perception out of it?
I mean, obviously, I think it's great. I enjoyed it in the article. It said that, they had President Johnson and Sister Browning, and then it said that their husbands went along as well. And so often it's the other way, right? It's a man, and then his wife is kind of the appendage to that, whereas the husbands were the appendage in this case. So that was that was interesting. But I think it sends a message that women can deliver sort of the message of the wider church to people who aren't members of the church. I think it's good. I assume you feel the same.
Definitely. And inevitably, I start thinking back when I was serving the mission, and then the effect sisters would have in certain areas that elders would not, be able to accomplish the same, wonders. So basically, when I think of it, definitely sisters would open, or would be capable of opening doors that elders would not be able to. So I think the effect of having, you know, both the sister leaders and the brother leaders, uh, visiting countries, ministering, spreading the good word, trying to, have opportunities to talk to local leaders and political leaders, and then
Yeah.
people, social leaders, people that are there to help, um, helps them accomplish one of the goals of the church. So this is, again, a very strong message from my take. Like, there's a symbol that the church is interested in letting the membership know that both, male and female, right, have equal opportunities to serve and to minister and to help around, right, and to, again, fulfill the purpose of the church as a worldwide, community,
Yeah.
inviting others to come to Christ. So
Yeah, I mean, I have pretty strong views on this that I'm not ready to put out onto the internet yet, because I do personally believe that the church is incredibly patriarchal and that we're totally not there in terms of giving equal opportunities to men and women in terms of our service. But I think they're moving in the right direction. So I think we can, agree on that and be united on that. And I'm hoping there's lots more of this to come in the future. And we see our women leaders being more visible and being given that mantle of responsibility to represent the church on an international level.
that's yeah, what we all expect to
Yeah.
happen. hopefully.
Hopefully, hopefully. And let us know your thoughts on this, listeners. So we invite you to send us an email, send us some feedback. What do you think about this men and women uh, sort of feeling within the church? Are men and women equal? Is the church patriarchal? Send us an email, contact@thisweekinmormons.com. Very interested to get your views on that.
So we've got a set of news articles about temples, and then generally speaking, we'll have a good, spirit when we talk about the temple, and definitely having more temples dedicated and being built at this point is an extra, boost in terms of seeing the wonder opportunities the church has to have, first of all, the resources, right, to do it, but most importantly to allow its members all over the globe to access the temple blessings and to attend on a regular basis to the temple. And one of these temples is the Desert Peak, which turns out to be the 200th temple in operation of the church, which I think is a huge number in comparison to, I think we saw before President Nelson's birthday, there was a set of images and news articles about the numbers in the church when he was born, right? And how in a period of 100 years, the church has been able to grow and exponentially, give access to both the doctrine, both and of course the visibility and the buildings and the access to all the, let's say, services and elements that are part of our worshiping and our church experience in general, right? So what do you think about having another temple in Utah first?
It's so funny because I'm just scanning through the article, and this temple is in a really interesting place. So, as you said, it's the Deseret Peak, Utah temple, but it's actually in, I think the name of the place, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it. I think it's Tooele. And Tooele is an interesting place because when I was about 14 years old, one of my first experiences with the church is that there was a BBC, which stands for British Broadcasting Corporation, documentary about a family in Tooele. And the show was called World's Strictest Parents. And the premise of the show is that they sent two unruly teenagers from the UK to all places all over the world, and one of them was to Tooele, and they stay with this family for a week, and then they sort of learn the values of the family, and it sees if it makes a difference to their behavior. And this was actually what got me interested in the church in the first place. So it's just really
Wow.
fun that there is now a temple in Tooele. But just going back to the article, what do I think about there being another temple in Utah? So there is a hilarious part of the article which says that previously members of the church living in Tooele have had to drive 30 minutes to attend the Salt
Oof.
Lake Temple. And they
Oof.
think that that's a long way. And I just find that so hilarious. When I lived in Tasmania, you would literally have to get on a plane and fly to Melbourne. I've told listeners before, I took my wedding dress on an aeroplane to get to the temple so that I could get married in the temple, So 30 minutes is absolutely nothing. I mean, I'm pretty lucky at the moment. I'm about an hour and a half from the London temple. So I live north of London, it's south of London. So you have to go around London to get to it. So as the crow flies, it's not that far, but it just takes forever because you've got to get around London. And sometimes the traffic is very, very volatile. So it can take sort of 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You have to plan a whole day if you're going to go. So I just find it funny. However, to answer your question, I've gone on several tangents now. I'm not against it. When I visited Utah in 2015, I could not believe how busy the temples were because I tried to do a bit of a temple tour and go to as many as I could. And I couldn't believe they were just packed. Every time I've been to the London temple, if I go during the week, usually there's only between 5 to 20 people on a session. And if you go at the weekend, you get the numbers are higher. But I was going during the week in Utah, and it felt like there were hundreds of people there. It felt like the temples were really busy. So I guess they need to keep building them in order to meet the demand that is there. So I'm not against it by any means. I think it's a good thing. And to reach
Yeah.
200 number is a big milestone.
Yeah, I think sometimes we just take for granted that actually people are using them. So the biggest, ratio that the church will consider when thinking about building temples is the demand of temple space, and then to do sessions and whatnot, right? So in my case, it's 2 hours, almost 2 hours and a half from the closest temple that is in Hartford, Connecticut. And then it will be 3 hours and a half to Palmyra, and then 3 hours and maybe more to New York City temple that has been remodeled by now. So we cannot even go there. So yeah, it's definitely a hustle. It's definitely a big challenge. But thinking about this again signals the church, main interest of having temples near to the saints that are willing to participate and worship there. The other piece of news article is from the Mendoza, Argentina temple. That is, it hits home in a way because Mendoza is the neighboring city to Chile, right? So from Santiago, it would take you like 6 hours driving. You have to cross the Andes Mountains to get to Mendoza, but it's a lovely drive and it's a lovely view there. Mendoza has some similarities, and I would say a reasonably big, community of Chileans also. So
Okay.
that's something interesting about it. It's a wonderful city. It's a very nice city. I've been there sometimes. And the fact that Elder Rasband was there for the dedication, and using this expression of the small acorn that turns into very strong oak. In fact, let me say verbatim what he said. Mendoza, once a small acorn, has become a mighty oak. Okay, and I think it's a powerful, view. I remember when I was a child, President Kimball said that all the Lamanites and all the promises made to them would become a reality for South Americans, right? And in a way, when I start seeing the development and how the church has been growing all around South America, and the opportunities members have to visit other places and then going on missions. My own experience as a missionary in South America, with 4 missions being fed only with South American missionaries, was in a way seeing small miracles happening in terms of the church membership, but also the willingness to serve, and then the blessings of the temple, right? Having the first one in Brazil and then the second in Chile. I think it's just, a very powerful reminder that we might think that the church is just stuck in the numbers, but in reality is continuously growing. And although there might be some of our friends, people around us that decide not to continue in their active participation in the church, that doesn't mean that the church is not, getting into the houses and the hearts of a lot of other people that for whatever reason didn't have the opportunity, or got into a point in their lives where they were willing to accept the invitation to follow, Jesus Christ's example, and then keep the covenant path, right? So I think it's just great to see this happening more often. More temples being dedicated. The happiness that brings to those saints. I mean, I, I wouldn't dare to say that I felt it firsthand, because when the temple in Chile was dedicated, I had months of age, and then they rededicated it later on. But it's not the same. I mean, you don't feel like it's your
Mm.
contribution or something around it, right? But how would you feel about seeing a temple being built around your geographical area? How do you think these people, let's say Mendoza, I think of the international temples, maybe Utah is a different experience, but how would you feel about having a temple nearby you that serves your community, people that you love and care for? uh, I don't know, have you ever thought of it?
Yeah, definitely. Not necessarily in the context of my local area here, because we do have a temple that is reasonably close to us. We've also had the Birmingham temple, which has been announced. That's going to be about 2 hours north of where I live at the moment. But I have thought about it in the context of where I used to live in Tasmania. because as I mentioned, you have to fly to the nearest temple. So if they announce a temple, I guess it would be in one of the major cities in Tasmania. So that would be Hobart or Launceston. If they were to announce a temple there, I would be incredibly excited, because it would mean that those, the friends and the people who were in the congregations when I lived there, the thought of them having a temple that they could go to without having to fly to and having to make that huge sacrifice, that would be very, very, very exciting. So hopefully we'll see that in the future. And if we see it at this conference, think of me, listeners, and think how excited I'll be. Honestly, I don't think I'd be able to contain myself. I was quite excited about Birmingham, and I don't have any personal connection to Birmingham at all. It was just another one in the UK. Was quite excited. And Edinburgh, they've announced as well. That's part of the UK as well, but that's really far away from where I am. So,
Anyways, just to add up to this, my stake has been inviting members for the last stake conferences to pray for a temple and then to attend more regularly the closest temples we've got, just to have the opportunity of being considered, a
interesting.
place a place that could have a temple, right? And then of course, this is wishful thinking because we're not such a big community, but there are other stakes around us that could benefit from a temple around this area. Also, I mean, we've got the train that is close by. Um, I mean, it's an area that might have certain opportunity to have a temple again, because the distances are reasonably big.
Yeah.
However, this has been the stake invitation for the last couple of stake conferences, and it would be very cool, at least to hear, right, in general conference, that they're going to build a temple here in New York State. So
Okay,
so
so
let's
what would the
let's
name, what would the area be? Would it be
oh, it would
Albany?
be Albany, New York.
Okay, so
Albany.
we've got to listen out for Albany, New York, or Hobart or Launceston, Australia. And if we get those, then we'll be very, very excited for this conference, because it's just next week. So,
Yeah.
it could be in the pipeline. Who knows?
Yes.
And I did
Yeah.
actually have one more thing that I wanted to say about the dedication of the Mendoza Argentina temple. And that is something very curious has happened. So, Elder Razband dedicated the temple, okay? But just go with me here. It was meant to be Elder Stevenson who dedicated that temple, and then they changed it to Elder Razband. But the story gets even stranger. So, my favorite apostle, if I'm allowed to have a favorite apostle, is Elder Kieran. Okay. Elder Kieran gave a talk, I think it was either this week or last week at BYU. And it was a really good talk. But in that talk, and his wife spoke as well, they both mentioned that they'd been given the assignment very, very last minute, and that it was meant to be one of the more senior apostles who gave that talk. Anyway, I looked back. It was meant to be Elder Stevenson. So I hope he's okay. I don't know what the situation is. I mean, Elder Kieran didn't seem like upset that Elder Stevenson wasn't there. He didn't mention that he'd been unwell or anything like that. But I'm wondering what is going on with Elder Stevenson. Where is he? Is he going to be at conference? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when you get these things, when it's a serious illness, we usually get some information from the church news or a reasonable outlet, but it could be a personal thing, like maybe one of his relatives, sons or daughters are sick, or his
True.
wife, right?
True. Yeah.
I mean, those things happen to any normal people on an everyday basis. So
Yeah.
we could think that could be one of the options, but definitely I think it's just interesting to wait and see for next week if we see him there, right? Because again, you put a seed there that is interesting to see how it evolves, right? And
I know, yeah.
yeah,
Well, we
yeah,
will see, and we wish him the best and his family the best. I hope it's, a good reason, not a bad reason, that he's not
yeah.
um, been able to do that. And it's interesting you bring up the point about how, the apostles, they have family things that come up as well. I think so often we see them as almost like they're not human. They don't take a day off, they're constantly working, they work until they die, they don't retire. But actually, yeah, they are really human as well, and they have things and that come
They,
up,
they,
and they
they,
have
they take some
priorities.
vacations though. Yes, they take some time off, some vacations every year. Yes, I mean, again, that's our perception. Definitely, they work a lot. I mean, seeing 100-year-old prophet still working is just for me, it's just shocking. Definitely. I
Mm.
mean, any normal human being would say, okay, it's time for me to retire, right? It's time for me to get some good rest.
Mm.
But I think that their calling and the mantle and uh, a living church needs them, and then if that is the Lord's will for them, then so be it. Again, I have different takes on it, and I would definitely think that they should retire at a certain age, because
Yeah.
that's what any normal human being does. And then these are labor let's say opportunities we've been gaining throughout the years, because this is being mindful about the body and the human experience. However, if this is what the Lord wants from them, and they're willing to be up to a task, then wonderful. So we've got a final article about temples, and this time is about the Salt Lake Temple, which is, of course, when we think of temples, inevitably you say, a letter they say temple, and then you think of the Salt Lake Temple, because it's the prevailing image of the church temples throughout the world. This is what missionaries should used to share with people that were learning the gospel. This is what we get from um, church images, and then general conference and whatnot. And of course, its image is slightly changing, right? For some people, it's a great thing. Is signaling great things for the future, but for some others, is rubbing the wrong way. So, what do you think about this, Georgia? About this divide, right, into the membership, right? Members that love the idea of the Salt Lake Temple being renovated, and members that just hate it, or think it's just sacrilegious, or maybe they're just ripping it apart and destroying it. What do you think about it?
I guess I don't have a personal connection to the Salt Lake Temple, so I struggle to relate to those who are finding it difficult that it's being uh, renovated. I suppose, yeah, I read an article saying it's being renovated rather than restored, that it's being changed quite a lot. I just assume that those people have their reasons and that they are doing it for good cause. I heard there's going to be two baptistries. I've never heard of that in a temple before. Maybe because I just haven't been to any of the really big ones. I don't know if that's a common thing for there to be two baptistries. Do you know about that?
No, not really, not really. But let's consider that this is a big temple, um, and it should accommodate, once the renovations are done, 600 people, and then it usually accommodates 200 people. So
Okay.
definitely, I mean, with all the renovations and all the changes in the rooms, the temple worship, takes you to a progression, right? And then the progression was signaled in the Salt Lake Temple through going to different rooms, right? However, this time, most of these rooms are going to be adjusted, so then the people that go and worship there will watch a video. So instead of changing rooms, they will experience all the progressions in the same room, which will allow people, of course, to not to be changing constantly in this progression, and therefore allowing the services to be utilized for more people at the same time. Okay,
I see.
so
Okay. Yeah, I can see why people are being are having their feathers ruffled the wrong way with that. I can see why people might be a bit upset because I suppose a lot of people may visit the Salt Lake Temple as an experience. They may get a lot of temple tourists going there, and if they're just going to have the same experience as any other temple, then they might be less inclined to visit in the first place.
and then another relevant fact is that the temple session there was acted. So there
Hmm.
was no video. It was actually acted out by senior missionaries.
Hmm.
So that was something also, in terms of temple tourism, so to say. It was also something worth experiencing, and that is
Yes.
not going to be available anymore after the renovations are done. So that's another element to it, to think, well, maybe people will be missing that. Even, I don't know, the senior missionaries that were there acting out, right, it would be just sad for them not to have the opportunity to continue doing so, right? And then but yeah, I think for me, again, probably this is not the best analogy for that, but it's when a church building like a chapel is renovated, sometimes it just loses its soul, right? I mean,
Hmm.
uh, there are lots of buildings personal experience in Chile, lots of people donated their stuff. People gave their engagement, their wedding rings, sold them just to raise money to build actually the buildings. People worked there, gave hours, right, to in the construction site to actually, put the bricks, right, on the walls of the church buildings. So when the renovations came around the 90s and then early 2000s, then lots of people were sad and a little bit mad about it, because all the things that they actually helped building were not there anymore, right? I mean, the wall that they built with, I don't know, friends, family, kids, right, are not there anymore because for standard reasons or whatever, they were torn apart or whatever. So yes, I can relate to that. As you said, I have no emotional attachment to the Salt Lake Temple. But having visited recently the conference center and seeing some of the pictures and the design and everything, you start wondering, well, definitely this could be adjusted to serve the current purposes, right, and to accommodate more people, and definitely make it seismic resilient. So, which are other of the standards that the church, in terms of building temples, tries to follow. So, all these things have a meaning, have a purpose, and definitely they are the best of the intentions. And I wouldn't dare to say that there's animosity or whatever. In fact, I think in one part of the article says that most of the art that was inside these rooms would be preserved as best as they can, and it will be available for people to go and do visits and everything, again because they understand that by doing these renovations they wanted to keep some of these things preserved. They understand that not all of them will be preserved properly, so that's why they
Yeah.
cannot keep them, right? And then again, history is important, and then trying to preserve historical artifacts is relevant, and but sometimes you cannot keep them the way they were originally intended or the way they originally were. So the best case you have is just to have an expo after, and then just showing some of them for
Yeah.
them to be preserved.
Yeah, and I mean it's going to attract so many visitors, right? When this is all done and when people are able to go around and have a look. And just to wrap up our temple news, I just want to share with you a very quick story about the about Temple Square. So I have a friend. We've been friends for about 20 years now. We are friends from when we were at school. And this past Monday, I actually got a text from her. So she is obviously not a member. All of my friends from school are not members. And she said, "Hello, how are you? I thought you'd be interested to hear that I had a few hours today in Salt Lake City before my flight back to Vancouver," which is where she lives now. She says, "We visited the Mormon Center, where they have the admin building, conference center, and some other temples. They had missionary girls walking around in pairs to talk to people, so we had nice chats with them. They were a complete mix of nationalities, and they are there for 18 months. It was super interesting to see and hear from them." And then she sent me a picture of the conference center. The conference center fits 21,000 people. They have big conferences twice a year where people come from worldwide. And then she said, "It's next month," as if I
Yes.
wouldn't know that information. And then she sent me some other pictures. So it was just so nice to hear from a friend who I have, no connection. We've probably never even spoken about church in any great detail, but she took it upon herself to go there, and I love it that she enjoyed it. So when all of these renovations are completed with the Salt Lake Temple, when they're able to take all of the scaffolding off and all of the building work is done, hopefully it'll be an opportunity for people to come and to learn about our faith. And since then we've been texting all week about different things. She's been asking me loads of questions. Really interestingly, she assumed that there were no LDS chapels in the UK. She assumed that I practiced my faith personally and that I went to kind of another denomination of Christianity to get my worship experience at church. So I was able to say to her, "No, we have chapels in the UK and all sorts." So I'm excited to talk to her more about it. People so often over here think that religion is this taboo subject that we can't talk about, but honestly I really enjoy talking about my faith. I guess that's why I have started participating in this podcast, even, to talk about faith more. So I thought that was a nice anecdote to wrap up our temple news there, to get someone else's perspective on the Salt Lake Temple.
Yes, very informative though. Yes, she was very up to the details. So yeah, thanks for that. Yes, that's great. Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
I
Thank you
know,
for sharing
so
that.
nice. But let's move on. So let's go to our next story now. So this is an article which was ran by Deseret News, and the title of the article is "The Most Desired Book: Why the First Edition of the Book of Mormon is Drawing Visitors to Libraries Across the Nation." So what this article is saying is that there are a few places in the United States where a first edition copy of the Book of Mormon is kept in a library, and the demand is so high that they've been able to run this article to say that so many people are going to visit these first editions of the Book of Mormon. So why would people specifically want to see a first edition? I'm curious. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
I mean, definitely, it's like with all the sacred books, you're interested in contrasting, maybe, right? I mean, what this first edition is similar or different from this new edition I have, where the changes, or the improvements, the modifications, right? Is it it follows the same pattern? Do I get the same reading experience, or do they add it, or cut some sections of it? So it's definitely, yeah, definitely a comparing, contrasting experience, I would say, first, right? Then second, probably you would be interested in seeing the printing, and the detail in the paper. I mean, those things for me are kind of a fetish, probably. And then this idea of smelling old books, right? And smelling the pages, and the quality of the printing, and then how they were able to fit all the words, and the way of they distributed the book. Did it have two columns, only one? Those kinds, I think, of silly things that in the end add up to some of the things. What about the all the citations and everything that we've got in our current Book of Mormon today, that probably in the first edition were not available for obvious reasons, right? So
Mm-hmm.
because they were not included in in the plates. So definitely those things might call people's attention. And I think, again, experiencing a first edition book, especially a book that has transformed, for better or worse, people's lives, is just relevant to see what does it have to say, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it says in the article that there were 5,000 first editions of the Book of Mormon printed, and it's estimated that about 700 copies exist today. Some people believe that number could be as low as 500. Some people think it's as high as 2,500. But it says that today, a first edition of the Book of Mormon would sell for about $200,000. So that's pretty significant, isn't it? That's a pretty
Yeah.
significant sum of money
Yeah.
to go for. And there's an interesting story in there as well, that it says that a couple of years ago, somebody found a first edition just in the belongings of a couple who had lived on a farm for nearly 50 years. In the rafters of a barn on the farm, they discovered a chest with a first edition of the Book of Mormon wrapped in a blanket. How crazy is that it had just been kept there on a farm for that long? So
But
I
the
guess they
interesting
can
thing,
probably.
wrapped, like, it was taken, it was meticulously preserved in a way, right? Or people
True,
that
true.
yeah.
Yeah, and they said the couple didn't even know that they had a copy. And it sold for $70,000. Can you imagine that? If in your house you just found something that you didn't even know you had that was worth $70,000.
There's a show, I think, in History Channel or something like that. Like, there's a family that have this pawn shop, which is very,
Mm-hmm.
very big and popular, and they had one chapter where someone had a first edition of the Book of Mormon. So then,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so yeah, I don't remember the price exactly, but definitely it was around the $100,000, something around those lines. And then
Mm-hmm.
they have specialists or people, technical people, that will come and assess the quality of the artifact or the product, right, before they decide what will be a fair price to pay for that. So
Oh,
yeah.
well, there we go. Shall we move on then? Shall we move to running?
Yes, that sounds like a fine idea to motivate us to do some physical activity at this point of the year. Yeah, when I was in Chile, summer was coming by, so all the gym memberships were packed by August, September, because
Yeah.
people will have to be ready for the summer from December, January, most likely onwards.
Mm.
Not the case here, but however, what's important here is this article talks about a running event that was held in Palmyra, New York. That is 3 hours and a half away from here. It's western north from where I am right now in Albany, New York. And what's interesting is they did it and they call it um,
The
5K
5K restoration run. Yeah.
restoration run, right? And it's also in a way to kind of recover a tradition they had for several years to have a pageant, right? And in fact, I've heard people from my current stake that were participating in that, and it was a very big, important event, a yearly event, and people from all over the stakes around the New York State and even stakes closer by would participate in that, both acting and also attending to this pageant event. So it's sad to hear that it stopped happening. I don't have reasons why that happened, but happened. I have no idea why they decided to discontinue the event, right?
Mm.
So this 5K came in a way to, first of all, gather the people from Palmyra. Uh, when we read in Doctrine and Covenants about Palmyra, we think, oh, this might be a big city now in 2024. In reality, it's a very, very small community. It's a very, very small town, right? It's basically a couple of streets, right? And then there's not a huge population there, right? It's close by Rochester, which is a bigger city here in the state of New York. But Palmyra itself is a very small community, right?
Mhm.
And definitely having a couple, three church history sites nearby is just, for us, is very important, but I don't think it's really, really important for the rest of the world as a city, right? And then
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
this activity where the community was invited is a way of showing, first of all, our interest as a church community to invite others not of our faith to engage and participate in activities with us. So definitely, I think this is a great move. It's a great opportunity for people that are non-members. Historically speaking, probably there might be some people that are not very happy about the church that still live there, right? There are descendants of those that were against it. But the whole idea of opening doors or inviting, again, the wider community to come and see and come and participate, I think is just great, and especially with something so good as running, right? So
Yeah, so it said that the 5K route took them past the Smith family farm, the Sacred Grove, and the Palmyra New York Temple. So that's, yeah, just a fun kind of community outreach effort there in Palmyra. 170 people taking part and making connections with the community. So really, really nice story there.
again, trying to confirm this idea that Palmyra is very, very small. So yeah,
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 so it's
just
probably
keeping
a big
this idea
deal.
in mind. Yes, it's a very, very small place, right?
Yeah.
And then again,
Well,
the biggest buildings probably Temple, and then the Smith Farm,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
Camora Hill,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Well, time is rapidly running out this evening, so I think we've got time for one more piece of news. So, this is one that I've been following for a couple of months now because it's UK based. So, there is a UK based YouTuber. His name, he goes by as Nemo the Mormon. He's got about 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's also got an Instagram presence as well, although he's not got quite the amount of followers there. And what he does is he commentates on church news and anything that's happening with church. And he has this week faced a disciplinary council for the work that he's been putting out on YouTube. And it's significant for a couple of reasons. On a personal level, his ward that he participates in is in Oxford, and that's where I used to live. So his stake president, who's conducting the disciplinary council, used to be my stake president. So I've got a personal connection there. But I've been following his work for the last couple of months and seeing he had he has been controversial. So he actually flew out to Texas to speak against the church with the controversy that took place in Fairview to do with the steeple height, which I know has been covered in the past on this podcast. And he has been fairly vocal about his issues with leadership, with where our tithing funds are going, and with senior apostles telling lies as well. And he's sort of tried to call out those lies and has tried to put together kind of a fact-based message to viewers. But this past week, so yesterday, in fact, he had his disciplinary council, the aftermath of which was live streamed on his channel. He had over 4,000 people watching the live stream to find out what was happening. He said that the stake presidency would be deliberating over the next couple of days, so we don't know what the outcome of that disciplinary council is, whether or not he has been excommunicated or not. But he asked for emails of support from people, and he received over 1,000 replies, which he shared with his stake presidency, people saying that he had not negatively impacted their faith. My take on it all, I believe in transparency, and I think that's what he was aiming for. I personally don't believe that he has done anything wrong. He has presented a case for issues which have been happening in the church. And to be honest, from his content, it's fact-based. He cites his sources. He, I don't think, stirs up unnecessary controversy. And the grounds by which the disciplinary council were called were for apostasy. And to me, that stings a little, because if we can't be critical, if we can't be rational about our own membership, if we are accused of apostatizing for questioning, then I think we run into massive difficulties. And it's hit me really hard, to be honest. I'm not sure that I feel comfortable if the outcome does lead to his, what do we call it now? Do we call it excommunication? Do we call it withdrawal of membership? Or have they changed
I
it?
think of excommunication like the natural way to call it. There's a change in the name, but in the end, I think all the listeners will get the
Yeah,
intuition behind it.
it is what it
So
is,
it
right?
is what it is, and I mean, I have no idea. I don't see his videos. You've mentioned him before. My only take on this is we all hope that whatever the outcome is something that is contributes to Nemo in terms of his experience, and when someone puts so much effort and energy on a task, it is because there is passion or there is an honest interest on doing things. He's definitely not getting paid from it, I guess, right? And then those are things to consider in terms of why people would do something like this, right? And I hope that his church leaders were capable of also understanding his experience and the reasonings behind why he's doing what he's been currently doing, and how this has helped him or impacted him in his worshiping. Because again, in the end, I don't want that the church becomes like a chore for me. I want it to become something that uplifts me and something that helps me cope with my own challenges, anxieties, and difficulties. And then when it becomes something else, then probably I need to reconsider my priorities and how I'm deciding, that the church is acting, or my activity in the church is impacting my own personal life. So first of all the best for Nemo. I hope that, again, whichever the outcome, he gets reassurance, right, of whatever has been happening. And then for all the people that has been able to hear about what he has as an argument or as a point, all views are valid, and then if we don't accept them, even if they're contrary to us, then yeah, probably we're in a position of dictatorship rather than, this is not a democracy, of course. I mean, religions are not democracies, but definitely censoring or censorship is not the way I perceive the Church of Christ, and Christ was not, right. So that would
Yeah.
be my take. Again, this is
You
not
know, oh, so much to
politics,
say.
uh,
So much to say. I
but
appreciate you
but then
saying censorship is not, your church. I love that, and I totally agree. I think it's so important that we are, I use the word transparent, authentic would be another word. I think it's so important that we are upfront about what we think about things. I don't think we should suppress our beliefs, even if they are contrary to the dogma, I suppose, of our leaders. And I feel really sad that he is being persecuted for this. You did also mention something that I wanted to correct, in that you said he's not doing this for money. Interestingly, he did actually quit his full time job. So I think he is monetizing this. And maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe he's using the church as a conduit to obtain some
profit, yes,
profit.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's the issue. I don't know enough about it. I don't know his personal financial situation enough, but I think the primary reason that he puts out the content is because he believes it's an important conversation to be having, and that premise I totally agree with, and it seems like you do as well.
So yeah, I hope all the best. It's time for me to wrap it up. So thank you, listeners, for all, the support, the energy, the motivation. We're happy to be able to do this on a regular basis. I'm very, very, very happy to be part of this. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. You enjoyed General Conference. Lots of expectations about. I saw something from the Salt Lake Tribune saying, "Is this Conference become a little bit political?" It happened in the past, so let's see how it goes. Right, here in the U.S., elections are coming soon in November, so probably there might be some talks about, our freedom to choose, and deciding on people rather than political parties, and so on and so forth, or the characteristics, the nature of the people that are going to be ruling for some years. So let's see how it goes, and hopefully we get good news about temples nearby, and then new changes or new adjustments to what being seen, because if we believe in a living church, then of course next week is the place to be, to check all the news and all the new changes we're going to be experiencing as church members. So all the best for all of you. Daniel Yanez, we hope to see you in our next episode, and let's all have a wonderful weekend.
And absolutely, if you'd like to stick around and join us for our Patreon segment, we are going to be discussing our General Conference predictions. So, for just a few dollars a month, we encourage you to subscribe to Patreon, where you can get that extra content. Any feedback for us, please contact us, contact@thisweekinmormons.com. And we hope you have a great weekend ahead. Take care.